Good morning. I am Darrell Bennett, and welcome to Help. You've been arrested. Now what? I want to tell you a little bit about myself and talk to you about who I am and why am I doing this outside? Why am I doing it in front of the federal courthouse here in New York City? Actually, you'll see two backdrops behind me, and we're going to cover a few things today. One is the federal courthouse that you've probably seen everybody from Sam Bankman-Fried to Epstein to most recently Sean Combs, aka Diddy. Um, their lawyers and, so to speak, coming out of those golden doors behind me. This is the home of where the five families were prosecuted. This is where Rudy Giuliani created, he didn't create the RICO laws, but he created the modern interpretation of the RICO laws. Let's put it that way. And then on this side of me, you'll see is the federal jail. And this is where folks who are inmates, prisoners, some who have already gone to trial and they're waiting for to be sent to prison, others who are here on motions, and then, of course, still others who are waiting for trial that are at that supermax. So I want to talk to you a bit about what do you do if you've been arrested. Now, for those of you that know me, I'm a graduate of Harvard Law School, a former attorney, and I've worked with people to navigate their way through the system to help them to be more successful. I want you to know that when you are up against in a legal case, you're not just up against a prosecutor, you're up against a juggernaut. This is an entire system, okay? The other thing you should know about me is that I have lived experience. I know what it's like going through the federal system. And I know what it's like to have an appeal and win the appeal. So I've seen this on both sides. And I've worked with people through the process. So what I want to share with you today, this is really a 30,000 foot view. And you'll excuse me as I look down at my notes, because I want to make sure that I cover the gambit of things, as well as many things that people reach out to me and ask me either on social media or just common questions that I've seen come out throughout my time working with people, consulting with people, representing people. Now, let me say this. This is not to be taken as legal advice. You need to contact, you always got to have the disclaimer. You need to contact your attorney about your specific case. This is education. This is empowerment, so you don't move in fear. And I'm not just talking to people who themselves may be the subject of litigation, who themselves may have been arrested. I'm talking to family members, so you know the process. Listen to me. If you know the process, you will be far more effective. You'll be far more effective. If you don't know, you can fall into all types of traps. I just want to put a note here. If you have any type of legal issue at all, you really need to reach out to me. I do legal consulting. I have a legal consulting firm. We do all types of legal consulting. And for those that need to be represented in the courtrooms, we have a large network of attorneys that we work with, and we can refer you to the right people to make sure you are taken care of. Make sure that you do not enter into those doors or those doors without representation. Okay, all right, let's get into this. I'm really excited about this. Who is this course for? This course is for anyone at any time that has been the subject of an arrest, an indictment, a complaint, or is somehow subject to criminal prosecution by the United States federal government or state governments as well as family members. I really want to make sure family members know. Wives. I get a lot of wives and mothers. And I'm not talking about mothers of 21, 22-year-olds. I mean, that too. I'm talking about mothers of 40, 50, 60-year-olds because they are concerned, right? I just recently were working with a man. He's 51 years old. His mother's 73 years old. She's back in the Dominican Republic, but she's been pulled into this process because whenever there is a legal issue, it affects all types of things. All right, so let me go through several things that we're going to talk about. We're really going to split this up into three parts. I'm going to start with talking about the legal things you need to know. If you've been arrested, what now? You need to know the steps. Let me tell you something. If you are forewarned, you can be forearmed, okay? So we're going to start with the legal process, but this is what makes me different than just those who just focused on the law. The law is only one aspect. I want to tell you, there's policy, there's business, there's other things that are happening. There's politics in the background. There's the shadow of the law. So we're going to talk about some of the other pieces that come in place, some of the collateral issues that could affect you and affect your case that are not necessarily law. We're also going to talk about business and career. That's important. That's important because I've known people who've won their case, but their business has been destroyed. Their brand has been destroyed. Their reputation has been destroyed. You have to know how to build and continue to build generational wealth despite being in the middle of a legal issue, right? That's one of the things that we help with. We help you keep your money right. We help you keep your money flow right and help you be in compliance with everything that the government needs you to be in compliance for so your money doesn't suffer along with other things that are happening, okay? All right, let's start with the legal things. Legal realities, navigating the federal system, okay? So I've shared with you, behind me is the United States Southern District of New York. This is probably the most powerful federal district in the United States of America. And, you know, like I said, they have prosecuted everyone from the heads of the five families in the 70s and 80s. Actually, that might have even been the 90s now that I think about it. It's a span of time all the way to, you know, the bigger cases, the headline cases that you see making the news, across cultural icons who are brought to bear. They're brought here. It's New York City. It's New York City. But this is beyond just New York City. This is even beyond federal, even though I'm talking federal. Why am I bringing up federal? I'm bringing up federal because this is a place where there are no cameras that go beyond here. You know, it was funny. The other day I was in there and the guy said, "This is tighter than the security at the airport." It's like, yeah, of course. So everything you see when you're watching on television and you see Orange is the New Black and you see people parading around in courts and all that, you should know that's all state court. This is not federal. This is a world that most people would never, for the most part, be exposed to. It is a different world. It is a world unlike state where people run out of money. I'm talking about the state runs out of money and, you know, they put together little ramshot trials here and there. The federal system, they're much more well-resourced and they almost never lose. Having said that, that's probably a good place for me to start. When we talk about a federal arrest, the reason why it's different with a federal arrest rather than a state arrest is 9 times out of 10, the federal arrest has come as a result of a warrant, as a result of an investigation. So they already have a significant amount of intel and information about the subject, as well as they're holding all the cards. That's different than a lot of state issues, which, you know, people are picked up in the middle of a crime already in progress, right? It's still can be disturbing for the families, right? And disturbing for the defendants, the charges, but it's a different situation. Let's say if someone is, let's give you an instance, the difference between someone who's, say, caught in the middle of a shooting, the police, right? And when I say the police, I'm talking about the local police, right? They're under state jurisdiction. They hear the shooting, they pull somebody over, right? Or run after gentlemen and arrest them, right? And they're charged with that. That's one thing, right? It's another thing where this shooting happened, right? Let's say it's June 1st, 2024, and now it's a year later, and this person's at work, and they go to the bathroom, and they come back, and they see a bunch of federal agents standing there saying, "Put your hands behind your back. We have a warrant," right? It's a whole different situation because at the federal level, they typically have so much more intel. And the reason why that's important for you to know is everything that I'm going to share with you, you got to see it in two parts here. It's the law, like, my professor at Harvard taught us this. You've got the law and then you've got the shadow of the law. And I would say 10% of what happens behind me is the law and 90% is the shadow of the law. It's the fear that they work off of, right? It's the fear. From the moment, this is what you need to know, from the moment that person is said, is this your name? Or there's a knock on their door, or federal agents have come to their job. From that very moment, beyond whatever maybe happened legally, there's the aura of fear. And in that aura of fear, it causes people to do things they wouldn't normally do. So you need to know your rights. You need to know, first of all, if you are the subject of an arrest, you do not have to talk. You don't. You do not, and you probably should not. They say, and it's true, that at first there was such a pushback by law enforcement communities being made to read the Miranda rights. This is a case, Arizona versus Miranda. You know this from the 80s. And the Supreme Court held from this point on, people need to be aware of their rights before they are questioned by law enforcement. The irony is now there's no pushback. Law enforcement loves it. Make sure I hit my mic, excuse me. Law enforcement loves it. Why do I say that? And I don't say it cynically. I say it very, intellectually, and what we know scientifically. We look at the numbers. It actually garners some trust. So listen to this for a second. So what happens is, this is even at the state level, right? The officer comes, sworn officers come, they make the arrest, right? The person's scared, right? They tell the person they're under arrest. Maybe they tell them what it's for at the time. Maybe they don't, because of the circumstances, things going on around them. They don't have to tell you immediately, right? They're doing their job, right? They may wait till the person gets in the car. They might say, we're going to take you down to the station. There's a number of things, right? So there's already that aura of fear, right? Then the person is told, before I go any further, I need to read you your rights, right? So they read the rights, right? What we find is there's this human-to-human connection where when the officer says, you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, you have the right to an attorney, that there's this human-to-human subconscious connection that's happening, that the person feels more comfortable. And even the officer kind of settles into it and says, okay, now that I've read all that, sometimes they even have a card, they read it very kindly and nicely, says, okay, now I want to hear your side of the story. Listen to me. Don't fall for the okie doke. There is no side of your story if you are the subject of litigation or there is an arrest. Do not fall for it. So what are your rights? You have the right to remain silent. That is a protection against compelled speech. They cannot compel you to speak, but it is not, listen to me, it is not a protection against voluntarily you saying things and them using it later. So this happens often. I'm working with someone now. They were arrested. They get in the car, right? They were arrested by the DEA. They start making all these comments because they're upset. I could have outrun you. I've outran y'all before, saying all of these things, right? Later, at trial, counsel is trying to suppress the statements. The judge says no. The Fifth Amendment protection here is not relevant. They were voluntarily making the statements. So what do I advise people to do? I always advise people, if you have been arrested, don't say anything. Listen to me, it's nothing you're going to say where you're going to say something to them and they're going to say, you know what, we got the wrong person. No. So let me back up a little bit. Let's say you're not in a situation where, let's see, how does the person get to an arrest? Well, we've already talked about, generally there's a warrant, right? Sometimes there's not a warrant. It could be a situation where there is not a warrant at all. If there is not a warrant, that means that that officers have seen something that, there's a crime in progress, or there's different exceptions, right? We're not going to get into all that. There's plain sight doctrine, which covers all of the different senses. If they see something happening again, right? Someone is fleeing, right? These are other things that are happening, right? The only reason I'm bringing this up because I want you to know the difference between a stop and an arrest. Legally, the difference between a stop and arrest is that a stop, because I get this a lot on my TikTok. People say, well, what's the legal standard? The legal standard for a stop is reasonable suspicion by an officer that a crime is taking place or has taken place. The standard for an arrest is probable cause. Right? And again, that probable cause could have been either already ascertained and they've gotten a warrant, or there could have been there's several exceptions to a warrant, right? But there's still needed probable cause for an arrest. Now, when does detainment in an arrest begin? It's not always so clear. So I'll give you the very easy. Someone recently, I'll give you an example. Someone we're working with, right? So they were pulled over. They were actually the passenger of a car. The DEA was doing somehow the DEA had been a part of, as a result of investigation, had been tagging this car. They decided they didn't want to wait for them to get to whatever destination they were getting to, so the officers pulled them over, right? So this person's a passenger. This is going to come up later. So this person's a passenger. So what happens is the officers all come, of course, and